Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do some essential bass sound design using the free Vital synthesizer. I'm going to show you how to make 808s, growls, pluck basses, and subs. So all of those sort of fundamental bass sounds that are essential in modern production. If you don't yet have Vital, download it using the link in the description. It's completely free, and then you can follow along with every step of this tutorial. So let's jump right into it. I'll start with the most simple sound and gradually get more complex through the tutorial, but there are chapter markers at the bottom of the video. If you already know how to do something, simply skip ahead. The first sound we're going to look at is a basic sub. This can be used to reinforce your track or reinforce kick drums, and it's fairly simple to make. So on Vital, the first thing we do is just initialize the preset here, initialize preset, and we're going to select a basic shape, which is just here, and we're going to keep it on this sine wave here. I have a keyboard in front of me, so if I just play a note, it sounds like this, and I can choose to play lower on the keyboard. Make sure you're wearing headphones so you can hear this, or I can pitch down the synth from inside Vital. So if I hold the shift key and scroll here, it pitches it down by an octave, and then another one. So either you can play lower on your keyboard, or you can just pitch the synth down. I prefer doing it this way. Now it sounds like this. So we have a nice solid note, but there's a few things we have to do to make it perfect. We only want to play one note at a time. If I play two keys, it starts messing up. So we go down to the voices here and just make sure that's on one so that we can only play one key at a time. Simple. Now, if we like, we can also add some glide to the sound. So if I put glide on here and turn on legato, we can actually sort of glide between notes. I'll make that more pronounced, which is something you might want. I don't want that in this case, but that's how you access it. And then a couple of things to make sure that we don't get any clicks, pops, or any other sort of issues is to take the phase, take both of these down to 0, and you can also add a little bit of attack and a little bit of release to the sound as well. This sounds okay, but it's going to struggle to cut through on smaller speaker systems, so we're going to add some effects to sort of fit it into the mix. First thing I want to do is just a left click up here to change it to this spectrum mode, and then we're going to go to the effects chain. You can add effects in your DAW if you'd like, but we're just going to keep it inside the synth for now. First thing is some distortion. So I'm just going to keep it on soft clipping, and as I drive this, you can hear upper harmonics being added. You can also see them on the analyzer here. So I'm also checking this in headphones, and you've got to be careful when you're making these bass sounds. Don't listen too loud for too long. I'm just going to set this to the right level. So we want just enough of that it will help cut it through in the mix, but not really enough that it's really, really crunchy. After that, we're just going to add a little bit of EQ, and there's a lot of things you can do here. You could just generally boost the low end, or you could sort of center it around a frequency you'd like to boost in the bass, or you could also cut down some of those harmonics if you created a little bit too much. I would adjust this in the context of the mix, trying to fit it around the kick and bass. You don't really want to do too much of this EQing in solo, but it can be quite fun to get a nice sort of huge low end on it. So that's most of it for this sound, but now this is going to develop to the next sound, which is a pluck bass. So again, we're just going to initialize the preset. This time we're going to stick with the initial sawtooth wave, which sounds like this. We're going to take the phase down again, and I'm going to pitch it down one octave. So I'm going to hold the shift and scroll wheel there. And that is going to be the sort of core fundamental part of the sound here. We're going to shape the envelope by pulling the sustain down a little bit. You can just click and drag these points. Something like this. We're going to adjust all of these a little bit more finely later on. Now let's turn the filter on, which is just down here. And it's filtered away all of that buzzy high end. I'm going to left click here and change it to a 24 dB per octave slope, which makes it steeper. Cuts away more of those high frequencies. When I adjust the cutoff position, it lets more of the high frequencies in. So I'd like to automate this so that it sort of adds a pluck to the sound like this. So I'm going to take envelope 2, I'm going to shape it like this, quite a lot of tension on this slope, and I'm going to link this to the cutoff by left clicking and dragging it, and then dropping it onto just here. I'm going to pull this position down, Then you hover over this circle and you scroll or you click and drag, and it gives us that sort of effect there. Play some lower notes. Perfect. So now we can adjust how much of that high end we want. If I push this circle all the way up, we get a lot of that click and buzz through. If I pull it down, we get a more sort of deep bass sound without all of that top end. So I like it somewhere in the middle. It's quite versatile. One way to dramatically change the tone right away is to just grab the resonance and push it up a little bit. Listen to how this sounds, which is just perfect for some genres. I'm going to keep it down like this. And now this is where you can go into your envelope and start sort of adjusting this quite a lot. You might want a pluck that sort of decays very quickly and there's not much bass left at the end, or you may want to push it up and have that sort of sustained note through your production. This entirely depends on what sort of track you're trying to push it into. You can also increase the attack time of the envelope here. Maybe not that much, but this means that if you have quite a powerful or short kick drum sample, instead of relying on side chaining all the time, you can just push the attack and then the kick and the bass sort of naturally fit around each other. But by all means, do your side chaining and your EQ notching to fit this into the mix the way it should be. And now we've got that sort of bass tone, but it's quite a mono, quite a thin sound, which is often fine for bass. But we're going to add an upper layer, which has a lot more width and excitement to it. But before we do that, I'm just going to take this back to one voice. I should have done that at the start. And then let's turn on oscillator 2. I'm going to send it to filter 1 as well, and I'm going to pitch it up 1 octave. So I'm going to just press the shift key and scroll up. I'm going to turn the level down. I'm going to add 5 or 6 voices of unison and take the detune to about 10%. Turn the phase down. Let's just take a listen. I'm going to just take a quick listen in headphones. I'll put the level quite far down. I don't want this to overtake the sound like this. I just want it to be very subtle, just a bit of extra width. Now let's go over to the effects tab, and we're going to add a couple of different things here. First is going to be some reverb. I'm just going to cut the low end out of the reverb. A lot of people say not to add reverb to a bass, but as long as it's not too muddy and there's not too much low end, just adds so much space and depth to a bass sound, and I find that it just helps it fit so much better. Just a little bit of space like this. Again, you're going to have to mix this into your track, but let's do a before and after. It just gives it that dimension and that texture. Again, you can add some distortion, which just gives the sound so much bite. Lovely. A little bit more attack. It's just gorgeous. And I'd also highly recommend using some compression, although I'd probably use a different plugin for this. Multiband mode is going to sound a bit crazy, a bit like that OTT effect. But I would even just use it in single band mode and use it just to try and sort of control the dynamics of the sound. There's loads of ways to modify this sound, mainly just by opening up the filter. You can change so much about the sound just with 2 little adjustments there. One thing I like to do to really fit this into your track is to just choose a different wave shape. So I'm on basic shapes here, and you can just choose a different shape. I love the square wave. It has this sort of just electronic edge to it, and if you blend that in, potentially use one of the different bending modes, you can just get like just a really, really nice texture and tone out of it that's going to be a little bit more exciting than that standard sawtooth wave. For the 808, I'm going to move a little bit more quickly. You've probably got the hang of the basics here, so I'm going to take it down to 1 voice, and I'm going to take the phase all the way down to 0. I'm going to go to basic shapes. I'm going to pitch this down an octave or 2, and we've got this sound. We're going to shape this, and 808s can be shaped a variety of ways. So for now, you could go like this if you want the 808 to decay away, or you could put it up here. For now, I'm going to go to the sustain, and I'm just going to take it to here. I want to have a good amount of sustain on this 808, but I'll show you some different variations in a moment. So this is what it sounds like. But really, it just sounds a lot like that sine wave with a bit of a decay. Now the thump is what really makes an 808 special. There's this pitch glide at the start. So what I'm going to do is select envelope 2. I'm just going to drag the sustain until we get this very sort of steep triangular shape that just goes to the top and then straight back down to the bottom. And we're going to use this to adjust the pitch of the whole synth so that the pitch is going to sort of glide down very quickly to the note that we play. So if I go to the matrix, which seems scary to a lot of people, but I'm going to keep this really simple. Left click here on the source and select envelope 2. This is the envelope we've just set up. Destination, left click, global, and then voice transpose. Now what you're going to hear is no change initially, but as I push this amount up, you're going to hear it get this sort of thump and then this very sort of pitchy effect going on. So it adds this sort of big knock, big thump at the start of the sound. So I'm just going to reel that in a little bit. And you notice how I'm swapping between sort of headphones and monitors here. It's good to reference on different systems when you're doing the bass, just so you know that you're getting it just right. Now let's go back to that voice tab, and here you can really change the shape of the 808. If I take the sustain here and drag it all the way down, we can have an 808 that's a little bit more like a kick, or we can have one that decays sort of gradually like this, or we can have sort of a more modern sounding one that keeps a lot of the sustain. 808 wouldn't be an 808 without some sort of gliding and legato movement here. So if I turn on legato and glide, we can glide between the notes. Which is great. So this is a performance feature. Sometimes, a lot of the time you want to have these sort of wild 808 glides. Other times you just want one note at a time. If we go to the effects now, we're going to add more distortion, which has been a common theme with all of these basses. So I'm just going to push the drive up. There's no right or wrong here. You just push it as much as you like. I really like using third-party plugins and stock plugins in my DAW to get the right kind of distortion and saturation. I would actually recommend another tutorial, which I'll link here, where you can take a copy of the bass signal, add a load of distortion to it, and then sort of blend it back in with the original one. It's called parallel processing. It gives you just a lot more control. But this again will help the 808 kick through on smaller speakers, headphones, anything that doesn't have that extreme extended low-end response. I'll also link another video which explains the difference between different types of saturation, whether that's tube, tape. For 808s, I would really recommend looking at tube distortion. Subtle amount of it is just so gorgeous. It usually works great in the mix, and really, like I said, there's no right or wrong. You can go crazy and push it all the way, or you can have it quite subtle, but this is the sort of basic sort of bare bones of an 808, and from here you can just fit it into your track however you need to. And now onto one of my favorite bass sounds, the growl bass. Again, I've just initialized the preset, and what I'm going to do is select, this time not a basic shape, there's one I really like called quad saw. Let's go ahead and pitch that down 1 octave, so shift and scroll, transpose -12, and I'm going to select a different spectral morph mode, which is smear, and then I'm going to take it all the way to the side. So this changes the sound quite dramatically. So I just want a little bit of that going on. And then I'm going to also select oscillator 2, and this time leave the pitch where it is, but I'm going to have many more voices. Let's just start with, say, 10 voices and about maybe 8 to 10% detuning, and turn the level down. I'm going to go straight to the effects chain and use a filter to roll off the extreme top end. So I'm going to take the resonance down and just do this. It just takes away that really fizzy high end. Let's go back to the voice tab. I'm also going to turn on smear for the spectral morph on oscillator 2, and this will make a lot more sense later as I start modulating these. I'm just going to turn oscillator 2 off, and I'm going to turn the filter on. This is going to adjust the sound of oscillator 1. Again, I'm just going to roll off some of that extreme top end, because I want this to be mostly providing the bass. And then I'm going to turn oscillator 2 on, turn filter 2 on and do this. And this changes it to a high pass filter. I'm just trying to roll off the low end from oscillator 2. I just want it to be providing the top end width. Just like this. So now when they cross over, which sounds quite good. I want a little bit more bass, a little less at the top end. That's sounding quite good. Now I'm going to use one of the random generators just to subtly sort of modulate the smear amounts here. So let's just link random 1 to here and pull it in a bit. And then I'm going to take random 2 and link it to this one here. Let's pull that in a little bit as well. So now the wavetables are being sort of warped and morphed, which just adds a lot more movement and dimension to the sound. And then we're going to go to the effects, and we're going to add some chorus to gel everything together and make it really super wide. I'm going to have to pull the mix in a little bit here. And I'm also going to add a little bit of reverb on the end. Again, cutting out a little bit of the low frequencies here and just adjusting the mix to taste. I might also add a little bit of EQ to this just to boost the bottom end a little bit. And I'd probably add some more distortion. Again, just a little bit of this soft clipping. It just adds a lot more character and personality to the sound. Although this synth has a lot of sort of top end and it's very aggressive, it is a very versatile synth. If you were to, say, put the filter at the end of the effects chain and just pull in the cutoff, you can get sort of a very sort of deep and textured bass that doesn't need to have all of that top end growl. And I think that if you use it right, it can sound sort of quite sinister and subdued, as well as being a bass that has the potential to be right in your face and super wide. So it's a very versatile sound, especially if you start sort of side chaining it, sort of 4 on the floor side chain. It's just an amazing synth for sort of dance music and most electronic genres, to be honest. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. I really enjoyed this one and I hope you did too. So let me know what you want to see next and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.